This is the village of Kerem, and it's where we think that Zechariah and his wife Elizabeth lived. It's not far from Jerusalem, it's only 5 miles or so. And he came back here, somehow explained to Elizabeth, probably wrote it down, and they conceived John here in Kerem. The next event in the New Testament story is that same angel who had visited Zechariah in the temple, that Annunciation, then visited Mary in Nazareth, about 100 kilometers away, for the more famous Annunciation, during which he told her, your relative Elizabeth, who's older, can't have children, she's now expecting a child. She's in her 6th month, that's 5 and a bit months. So once she had sorted things out with Joseph, which she had to do, the account in Luke says she made haste to come here. It's the first thing she did was to come, of course she did, came to see Elizabeth. And when she arrived at the house, she called out Elizabeth, and at that point, John in the womb leaped. The first person unbidden to recognize the yet unborn child, an unborn child still in his mother's womb. And at that point, the Holy Spirit came on Elizabeth, and you have what I think is the most beautiful prophecy over Mary by Elizabeth anywhere. It's fabulous. You've got to read it in Luke 1. At that, Mary, so encouraged, poured out the Magnificat. And this church over here has got around it tiles containing the Magnificat in scores of different languages to record that moment. Beautiful. Of course, then John was born. Mary stayed with Elizabeth and Zechariah for 3 months, which brought Elizabeth to full term. So Mary was there with Jesus in the womb, there present at John's birth. 8 days later, the story picks up. That church is built to remember it. The naming ceremony of John the Baptist. And Elizabeth was asked, what are you going to call him? It was at his circumcision, of course. What are you going to call him? She said, John. Well, she said Yohanan, which is the Hebrew. The New Testament Greek is Ioannis. And it means Jehovah brings grace, or Yahweh brings grace. And the neighbours and other relatives said, oh, you can't call him that, it's not a family name. And we're going to ask Zechariah, who couldn't speak. So he asked for a tablet and he wrote down, his name is Yohanan. His name is John. At which point he was filled with the Holy Spirit and came out with the prophecy that we know as the Benedictus. It's all wonderful. It all happened here. Jesus and John knew each other all their lives. They were lifelong cousin friends, just as Elizabeth and Mary were relatives and knew each other very, very well. John was Jesus's closest collaborator. And we're going to pick up the story next over the other side of the River Jordan at the baptism site. And that's where it gets complicated. This is just to paint a background to the story.